welcome to the Wild Wild West. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Over that away, wait, hold on. That away, got to remember there's a mirror on these cameras, is DZ repping his Los Angeles Chargers. Jack will be with us momentarily. He has let us both know that he is doing his best to get here on the pod, and he will be here shortly. We do have a great show for you tonight, though. We are going to break down just a very small, few pieces of news here with regards to all of the teams. Obviously, we got the news breaking with J.K. Dobbins being signed to my Denver Broncos. We kind of hinted on that in last week's show, but it was officially made official yesterday, just in time for the 5280 podcast, which you can catch on.
That must have been one hell of a dinner, Richie.
It was quite interesting, and then we got news coming out of from the Raiders where they signed Jermaine Pratt from the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals seem to be absolutely hell-bent on having zero defensive production. And we'll just wait and see how that goes. But I actually predicted Jermaine Pratt going to the Raiders yesterday on the 5280 podcast in the comments, where they were saying, "Oh, we should bring him into the Broncos and this, that, and the other." And my comment was, I don't really want him on the Broncos despite his production. I think that you keep Singleton, who's got the locker room presence and is a locker room guy. I think that's important to keep that veteran presence in Singleton here. And then I think we have 2 or 3 inside linebackers who are UDFAs who we brought in and have kept kind of locked in, who I believe are better served for us as Broncos country here to develop them and then bring them up through the ranks to eventually have them convert into starters. I believe maturation and development on a team is just as important as the quality of free agents that you sign or bring in, because your team is built through that developmental process, and you often tank your team by constantly needing to bring in free agents. But anywho.
I don't know what that comment means.
Yeah.
Briefly looking
over to you, and we'll kind of talk about those 2 signings, which are obviously,
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the Pratt one. He was a hell of a player for the Bengals. I believe he was a captain of the defense or one of the captains. He's got great stats last season, man. I think it was like 120 or 143 solo tackles or combined. The dude's a force. He's a vet. He's a wily vet. And briefly looking at the Raiders kind of depth chart with their linebackers, he's a welcome addition to that room. So I expect, it's a 1-year deal. I think that's everybody. That's the whole, mantra is everybody signing handing out 1-year deals. But I think he's going to help. He knows what he's going to do. So I think the Raiders got a good one. And then as for the JK, the writing was on the wall. I was just kind of hoping that it wasn't sticking, because this is a thing me and some of these Charger fans have talked about on X. It's just like we are losing players to division rivals, which seems like in the last few years, way too many. I think right now on the Chiefs, there's 3 ex-Chargers. And it sucks because you want them to go, you want them to succeed, especially for a guy like JK. He's a really good locker room guy. He's a good running back too. And you want him to succeed, and you root for him. But with your division opponent that you see twice a year, come on, man, you're killing me, Smalls. And Bronco fans are going to love him. He's a great guy. And I think they just didn't want to deal with his, potential missing time. And I think, though, with the stable they had, say they didn't draft Amari Hampton this season, I would have definitely loved to have him back. I liked him. He I think he played 13 games, had 900 some odd yards or something like that. So, and I predicted that he's going to Denver. Like when I heard the rumblings, I was in a chat with some Charger fans, and some people were saying, "Oh, he's going to go to Chicago or go somewhere else." I'm like, "No, he's going to Denver because they need a vet presence in that running back room, in my opinion, and they got it." And I could see him being him and RJ Harvey going 1-2, or I could even see him just kind of being a third down back or something like that, like, or Estime gets goal line carries, something along those lines. So
Right.
I think you guys are going to enjoy him, root for him, just not against us on Sundays.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to go back to Pratt in a minute, but we'll touch on JK just because obviously, familiarity on your part and all that sort of thing. So what I believe that this does for the Denver Broncos running back room rather, is I think JK kind of goes to the front of the line almost immediately, given his production and veteran presence.
I can see that.
And hear me out, because I know the Broncos fans that are in here, they're like, "Oh, you've got to be kidding me, man. No way. What about RJ or what about Estime or whatever?" I agree. I think both of those guys have potential. But what I think we need to also look at here is Sean Payton likes certain types of guys and certain types of players, and he likes to have diversification within the running back room. And I'm looking at now, just in terms of what we have on the roster, to say, all right, so we have JK, who, yes, has had some injury history, but the Broncos have had the healthiest roster now 2 seasons in a row. We've also got RJ Harvey, a rookie, who had incredible production in college, who can now learn behind J.K. Dobbins. So I can see J.K. and RJ being kind of like the rotational backs, like 1A, 1B, 1A, 1B, 1A, 1B. And then the question then becomes, is Estime the for sure RB3 on the Broncos? Or
you still got McLaughlin, right?
Well, we got McLaughlin. We also have Watson. And we have Bidet. So the thing is, what a lot of people don't realize about Tyler Bidet is that he is kind of a veteran presence, but with very low tread on the tires. And I know Sean Payton, from what he was saying in the early onset of the offseason last year, kind of at this time last season, he was raving about Bidet and what he looked like on the field. And I actually think that Tyler Bidet was actually, quickly becoming, one of his favorites, just because he was not a veteran, but had the maturity to kind of understand what to do and how to do it. The other thing that McLaughlin has going for him is he's got an interesting blend of size and speed, but the problem that he has is that he's not able to pass pro well or at all.
Dobbins can pass pro.
But that's my point, though, right? Which is McLaughlin is an interesting guy because he's got some burst and he's proven that he can be productive. But my concern, and it's a true concern, is McLaughlin and being able to both stay on the field, and when he's on the field, if he's not more of a tell for the offense. And so that's where, you may get a guy like Watson or Bidet, who may be favored perhaps as being an RB3 or an RB4, depending on how many we keep. Anyways, it's going to be a really, really interesting offseason discussion. We will obviously, on this show, get into 53-man roster predictions and whatnot as the offseason goes on.
It's way too early for that.
And start talking about preseason games and all that sort of thing. So that will be the running back room for my Denver Broncos, and who pops in that kind of that latter half of the running back room and who seems to be favored versus not is going to be very interesting for me. And I do think that for those of you that are not Broncos fans, I think that's something to look at, because who's on our team in the running back room will help define how good or how bad opposing defenses will be able to do against us, which oddly enough is exactly what we're going to be talking about later in the show in terms of defensive rankings for the entire AFC West, 1 through 4, for each of our teams.
Hey, what's up, gentlemen?
What's going on, Jack?
Hey, apologize. I was running a little late today. I get off work usually at 4, but I had a SEP divorce call, and those always take forever to separate account outs and get them both squared away. So apologize to you. Apologize to all the fans in the chat. Good to see the Raider Nation guys showing up again. Nabman, Sacktown.
Jack, can we get your how you feel about Jermaine Pratt?
Absolutely. I'm stoked. Because you know what? We only have one outside linebacker on the whole roster before signing him. So
wait, is he an outside or inside linebacker?
No, he's an outside linebacker. He's a big outside linebacker.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
6'3", 250.
Yeah, he's a big boy. He runs a 4.59 40. Had 143 tackles, 80 of them were solo, 63 assists, 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles. But he also misses tackles though as well too. He had 20 missed tackles last year. But I don't. The money wasn't bad. So 4.5 mils somewhere in there that I read. I'm excited to get. I'm excited to get him.
Yeah, that signing makes total sense for you guys. Like as soon as I saw that they released him, I'm like, I think Richie even said it. He said he called it on another podcast, or vlog. But when they released him, I'm like, oh, this has Raiders all over it. Just because I was saying, and this is no knock on the Raiders, but I was like, with the departure of Spillane and such, and looking at, briefly looking over you guys' depth chart, I mean, to get a guy who was a captain of a defense, for Cincinnati, getting him on that deal makes total sense.
Yeah, and you look at the reason why they cut him too. I mean, you got 2 receivers that you got to pay, which they did. They got Trey Henderson, who they definitely want to re-sign, and he's definitely more of a player that you want to keep, over Pratt. Hey, what's up? I'm No Bueno. Chewy, good to see you, brothers.
It's a hot mess in Cincinnati right now, Jack.
Oh, it sure is. So again, I'm excited because now there's going to be some competition, for that outside linebacker position. Before it was just Amari Gainer. I mean, that was really it out there. Who are you going to put out there on 3rd down?
Did you guys draft Tommy Eichenberg this year or last season?
Last year, but
okay.
he's a middle linebacker though.
Okay,
like everybody else on that roster is middle linebackers.
Gotcha.
So I'm just glad to have some diversity with them. And I haven't seen any of his tape or anything like that or any highlights, so I don't really know much about it. So DZ, thank you for putting that in our little group chat earlier. So it gave me an opportunity to actually look a little information up on him.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I thought it was a great signing. I have no bad stuff to say. Not all these guys you guys are going to see that are getting cut from teams or waived. They're going to come with their flaws. So, there's no perfect guy that's just going to be magically waived by these teams. And I think it's a slam dunk signing on your guys' end.
Yeah, go ahead. Now go ahead and put what you saw in the chat. Because again, it's such a fresh signing. I don't know how many people got the opportunity to actually, look at what he's done.
So I got a question for you, DZ. You had a defensive tackle, and I can't remember the dude's name anymore. That went to the Raiders last year.
Or was that 2 years ago?
Coach hated him. Hated him.
No, but now I think he's on the. Is that isn't he on the Chiefs now? God, what the heck's his name?
Dude, I'm drawing. I know who you're talking about. They got him from Notre Dame.
Yeah, he's on
a. He played one season.
He hit Herbert out of bounds and caused a scrum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's on the Chiefs now.
So, anyways, where I was going with that, though, is it's not just that no player is perfect. The other thing to keep in mind is that sometimes players that came from other teams were either A, underutilized on that team, and or, because it could be both, just were not a fit for that defensive scheme that they came from.
Sure.
And so don't necessarily sit there and say, hey, no. The dude that didn't work there is not going to work here.
No.
There's plenty of scenarios here. I mean, I'll give you another example just on my Broncos for those Broncos fans that are in the chat is Shelby Harris. Shelby Harris is a great example of a guy that kind of
I like Shelby.
Yeah, but he's the dude that bounced around the league a little bit, landed with Denver. You have big D lineman, bounced around the league a little bit, and found his groove in Denver, and frankly has played quite well in the NFL since joining my Denver Broncos and then moving on. But either way, the point is, just because a dude didn't work for another team doesn't mean that he's not going to work for your team. And you need to look at the roster fit. You need to look at the style fit. You need to look at all these different factors before you sit there and slam a guy just because he didn't work somewhere else.
Totally agree, 100%.
Well, there's also I looked at like Robert Spillane, who played for Pittsburgh, and he was okay there, but he couldn't really cover anybody. And then he actually developed those skills when he came to the Raiders. So that's, and just like quarterbacks or any position. You never know what everyone's going to do, but there's always a lot of what ifs. And then you get, these really good players and you expect more from them and they come over and it's like they lay an egg.
Yeah, which happens more often than not, though, to be honest with you. I'm looking up this guy's name. Jerry Tillery, is that the guy?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he is not.
That's it, Tillery.
He is not a fan favorite in LA. Also, kind of small news. Chiefs released one of their D linemen, Sika Ika, very weird name. But I was looking at their roster last night and just going through it, and then they released him today. I want to say he was their biggest D lineman or heaviest. I think their biggest might still be Chris Jones. I think Chris Jones is like 6'6", 320 or something. But they released one of their heaviest guys, so I expect him to get nabbed up too. He's been more of a practice squad guy, but a lot of these teams right now need guys for camp and preseason.
Well, and they're also looking for someone to pop. Right, they're looking for that extra guy that might,
LSU guy. I think he was drafted by the Eagles, if I'm not mistaken. Bounced around a couple practice squads, still very young. So that's another name to watch out for, especially injuries. I'm already seeing there's a couple of star wide receivers getting hurt at camp. I believe Brian Thomas Jr. went down with a shoulder injury. I think he's okay, but something bad happened for the Commanders. Noah Brown, one of their wide receivers, went down. It doesn't look good, got carted off. So, these are the injuries I hate. Absolutely cannot stand when guys get hurt running against air or something like that. Like, it drives me crazy. And believe me, being as a Chargers fan,
God, tell me about it.
I've seen it like every year. So I don't have any wood around me. Oh, I guess it's wall. I got to knock on some wood, man, because we got to get that monkey off our back.
Yeah, I mean,
knock on it twice.
Seriously.
I mean, this is actually a huge difference, right? Where, for example, you start getting worried, actually, to be quite frank, about your college and the UDFAs as well as your signings, because what these college guys are starting to go through is they're going through more rigorous and more regimented training than they really have ever gone through in their life. And so their bodies, no, that's what I meant, like as in right now. And so their bodies are only now just learning to absorb that additional impact that their body is now taking. And so sometimes you end up with these college and rookies and whatnot, whose bodies have never really been pushed to these limits before. And you sometimes find that some of them have a breaking point, and this is not that you want to see it, but this is unfortunately kind of the nature of the beast.
And for the most part, Richie, they're still growing. all these rookie guys, they're still growing. We all remember having growth spurts in high school or middle school or whatever it was, and it's kind of funny. You look at it, there's rookie you draft, right, and you're like so excited, and then you see him 1 or 2 years later, and you're like, wow, like they put on this much muscle, like this is crazy, or something like that. So yeah, and I mean, there's some college programs out there that do a really good job where these guys get ready. But, I kind of picking off of what I said about last week on 2 of our wide receivers is they weren't up to par fitness-wise. So I do like
hit that rookie ceiling, too. I mean, just the amount of games, it's just they're just not used to it. And like you said, DZ, they're growing young men.
I mean, what is college season, right? Like, say you don't go into the playoffs or anything like that. You're playing what? Somebody in the chat could help us out. I'm not a big college guy, but I believe it's like, what, 14 games? 12 games?
Something like that.
And now you're going into where it's 17 games plus 3 preseasons. And if you're on the Chargers or Detroit, you're getting an extra 12 games. So, yeah. So, God. So, yeah, it's 17 plus 4 if you're a Charger Lion this year. You are playing some games. And that's not including playoffs or, if you can get into that stuff, which will be a lot harder this season, in my opinion.
Yeah, our whole division is going to be a lot harder, that's for sure. No, good news when you're talking about guys being out last year. Like I just looked at like Malcolm Kuntz, in air, again the air in a practice, and never played one snap in the regular season.
Yeah, it sucks, man. It sucks so bad. Or having a guy get hurt in camp and then limping into the season. It's just like, come on.
Well, and when we get to the defensive tackles, then there's a couple things I'll bring up there about injuries.
So I just want to quickly touch. We touched on the Raiders signing of Pratt. Jack wanted to obviously just touch base, obviously on the news that came out yesterday because why not? Obviously, the Broncos signed officially J.K. Dobbins to our running back room. It is I
know DZ just loves that one.
It is.
It sucks. It hurts.
It really is one of the few moves.
It's like Melvin Gordon almost.
Yeah. No, I actually think J.K. Dobbins is a bit better than Melvin Gordon because I think he's a better locker room guy.
There you have that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Melvin Gordon actually didn't do all that well when he came to the Broncos. He had a couple flashes and stuff like that with certain things, but overall he was not what we would have expected from someone who kind of had that kind of aura that he tried to, promote himself as having, right?
So cool, Kev.
But I really do think that J.K. Dobbins, just to kind of quickly put a pin in this so we can move on to the defensive rankings because there's quite a bit to go through there. He's one of the few guys that was still available as free agent in the running back game that is a true veteran, an actual talented veteran still left in the open market, and immediately raises the ceiling of your running back room based on production and
now
quality,
I believe
and quality of character as well.
Rich, and now I believe that JK I think he's 3 years removed from his major injury. Because I believe when he played with the Chargers, he was 2 years. The Chargers did shut him down. He went on IR for 4 weeks late in the season, which really sucked. And I believe that's one of the reasons why they kind of chose to go away from him. But they tendered him, so they're hoping to get back a comp pick, which I don't think is going to happen because I believe we brought in more free agents than we let go this season. If anybody's curious on how that works, I'm still learning, to be honest with you guys. Because so it looks like next season we're only going to have 6 draft picks, which sucks. But you guys, the way that Peyton uses the running backs, this might be really good for JK, especially like the screen game. He's a really good pass catcher, things like that. I just know that, don't run him on goal lines or anything like that, in my opinion, because that didn't work out well with him last season. But other than that, dude, the guy's still got juice, plenty of juice, and he doesn't have that much wear and tear on him. He's just had to deal with these stupid injuries.
No, I agree. I agree. So, I think we've kind of covered off both of the new additions. Yes, J.K. Dobbins is a Bronco, Cool Kev. He signed yesterday. The announcement was officially kind of made online today, but it was, all the insiders and all that announced that yesterday. And then, of course, Jermaine Pratt signed with the Raiders today, which is obviously relevant for you and Jack and all the other Raiders fans that are joining us this evening. But as we move on and start looking at kind of comparative rankings, this is actually really one of my favorite segments that we kind of do on the show in the lead into the season, because it does force us to kind of start really assessing our teams a little bit more objectively, as opposed to just kind of, homering, if you will, to say, oh, no. Because, if you're going to do a ranking, you actually have to assess what the other team has and what you're going up against. And I think that's a really important thing. So with that in mind, I think we need to break out and break apart a couple of position groups here. And I think that's important that kind of we all are on the same page there. So I think nose tackle, like interior defensive line, so
yes,
like nose tackle, DN, I think you group them together.
Oh, you want to group them together? Then, I was thinking of doing it separately, because since the Raiders and Kansas City run a 4-3 and both you guys run a 3-4, I was thinking, do the interior and then do the edge rushers. If you want to do it all together or separate them.
Well, outside linebackers and edge, I kind of group together. So if I'm going to do edge, I think what you would end up doing is you do edge DNs and outside backers that are edge rushers, and you kind of group those as similar positions, right?
Well, that's how I always see it. Is like the outside linebacker that you guys have are your edge rushers, because again, on the 4-3, we're not going to have that outside linebacker for rushing. We're going to actually call it defensive end. So why would we just call them edge rushers?
Yeah, edge position.
And then you're going to have the inside backers, and then you're going to have corners, safeties, and that about does it for the defense.
Yep. Might as well throw special teams in there if we have time.
And then special teams is 1, 2, 3, right? Like.
Thank you for reminding me about that one. I said I wanted to talk punters.
No offense. Can we just mutually agree to kind of say, yes, a long snapper exists, and as long as you have a halfway decent one, you're fine?
Yeah, I'm not going to count long snapper. just the kicker and the punter. I don't know how to gauge the long snapper from one team to another, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Unless someone who is all pro every single year for what they do. And I probably still wouldn't even known that, if they were all pro on your team, because it's not something I track.
Jack, we're going to throw this over to you, and we're going to start with the interior defensive lineman.
All right. So
the interior defensive lineman, yeah.
So, I think it's kind of obvious. When you got a Chandler Jones sitting out there, he's the number one defensive tackle pretty much in the entire NFL.
Chris Jones, Jack.
Chris Jones. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
And then you look up. It actually Mike Pennell's a good player himself. So yeah, it was pretty easy for me to say that was my number one. Or are we going to go backwards, or are we going forwards? How do you guys want to do it?
Just do it however you want, man.
I already started off this way, so I guess I'll finish it up this way.
Yeah, man.
Because I know last week we did it backwards. So this is where it got really tricky for me. I got arrows going both ways. So that's what I was going to talk about, again, with injuries, that we were talking about a couple minutes ago. Adam Butler, who's been missed all. Found out it was not an injury. He's going to have a baby, so he decided to skip the OTAs and stay with his wife, which I'm said his wife is pregnant.
Oh, right.
So he's
having a baby. He's just going there for support.
Yes.
Right. Good. Thanks.
So, but you know what I mean. So I was wondering because I'm like, because Christian Wilkerson's out. What's up, Yoshi? I'm no bueno. All the other Raider fans that are red shirt out there. So good to see you guys. Cool, Kev. Always a pleasure. But then here's the concern. This is where it gets really dicey for me and where I would rank my Raiders, because you got a top 10 defensive tackle in Christian Wilkins. And he missed almost all of last year, has been in a walking boot, had surgery. He got out of the walking boot and he had a setback and he's back in the walking boot. So, I mean, when you're missing a full year worth of practice, you got to build that strength up. If I'm just counting him as to be the Christian Wilkinson, the guy they paid $110 million for.
Dude, I thought that was 75. Damn, 110.
Yeah. And,
dog.
And again, he was ranked a top 10. He's, again, we all take PFF stuff with a grain of salt, and they still got him ranked number 10 overall in the NFL.
Yeah.
So if I had to say, again, a healthy Christian Wilkerson, then I would have to say interior. I would have to say my Raiders are number 2. But with that being said, I really like what the Broncos have. And both those players are stout interior players. And if Christian's not healthy, well, then I can easily see the Broncos at number 3. Easily, and then at number 3. So, again, the depth chart for the Raiders is not as deep as what Denver has for sure. But again, just looking at the pure starters there, if healthy, then I see it. But I would have to go Denver number 3. When you got your nose tackle DJ Jones on there, and it's since you guys do the 3-4, and again, if Zach Allen, are we counting him as a defensive tackle or an edge rusher? But I think we're counting him as a defensive tackle. I like what they have, and then John Franklin Myers.
He's one of my favorite players, by the way.
So they're all really stout players. So. And then just the depth overall, I like the depth better than what the Raiders have for sure. And then, I still, a player that I really liked on your team, DZ, in the way of Puna. I talked about him a lot last year. I think he's ranked number 15th overall as a defensive tackle. And
he's heading into his 12th season, Jack. So he's getting long in the tooth. But
he's still doing it.
He's a workout warrior, man. He doesn't miss workouts, which is crazy. I've been hearing every day he's working out at the facility. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see somebody like that. He says he wants to be a machine. He wants to be unbreakable. And I think this is going to be his last season. So hopefully he goes out with the high, man.
Well, I hope he goes out with the high because I will admit it was fun watching him last year for your Chargers play, because that was like from many years before then. It's just like, just run the ball up the damn middle. You're going to get these guys just running up the middle, and Puna's in there and he's stuffing stuff. He's stuffing it. So I appreciated the way he played. He was a hard-nosed player, but that's where I'm at with this. And again, my rankings can easily switch between my Raiders and Denver based on health and how can you recover from being in a walking boot for 8 months. So I don't know if that can happen. If he can't do that, then I'll give it to Denver.
Yeah.
What's up, Jeff?
Sounds solid, man.
Yoshi.
I think there's like a civil war going on, or there's not a civil war, but there's a war going on in the chat. Is
Herrera? I got popcorn.
Yeah, is that Piano Man? Is Herrera?
That is Piano Man. He changed his name.
Oh,
he changed his name since he gets kicked off on Raider shows. So
I was confused by that.
I'm all for it. Anyways, who is the really big dude? Can't remember his name. He might still be playing. He's like 6'7" or 6'8", defensive lineman, Colorado native, was on the Ravens for a long time. The dude's
I know who you're talking.
Ezeruke?
No. He's like
Campbell. Isn't it Campbell?
Calais Campbell. That's it.
Oh, Calais. Oh, yeah. Is he still
dude,
free agent?
That dude has played at a high level for 15 years.
Yeah.
like it is unbelievable.
It's Campbell, right?
Yeah, Calais Campbell.
Yes. He was a dog.
That was well timed.
Hey, that dog is saying that Calais Campbell's a dog because he is a dog.
That was well timed.
Yeah.
Well timed.
My dog Cooper agrees.
Mm-hmm. So Calais Campbell was with the Dolphins last season, and I have heard no inkling I've not heard him actually. Oh, he's with the Cardinals this year.
Thanks,
he's
chat.
With the Cardinals this year. So, anyways, that's incredible. The fact that he has played at such a high level for that long and is still able to play. He's 38 years old, by the way.
Especially guys that size, it's just.
He is 6'8" and 307 pounds. So he is that is a mammoth human being, right? That's just a big, big, big dude.
Right.
And I do think at one point he actually may have been heavier than 307. But either way, that is a very large human being, and he has played in the NFL at a very high level for a very, very long time. So, Jack, I'm sorry, but I have some pretty substantial issues with your ranking.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
Yeah. So I agree when you're talking at single best player overall in the interior defensive line. That's not a contest. That's Chris Jones. He hasn't been dethroned from that. Just own it, call it a day. Thanks. Yeah. Bye. Now, where you start getting into the more interesting discussions, and this is where we had some talks on the show when Alex was still with us here, and the Chiefs got smoked in the Super Bowl. I hope Alex sees that. That's just friendly dig. But when the Chiefs got smoked in the Super Bowl by the Eagles, what really set the Eagles apart from the Chiefs was the depth on the defensive line. The quality of depth on the defensive line. And so what my challenge that I have with the Chiefs, it's not so much that they have a bad defensive line. In fact, I actually think they have a decent defensive line. But the question is, once you get past Chris Jones, what's the drop-off between him and the next guy? And then how does the rest of, or the totality of the defensive line compare? Because it is very much a rotational position group in the NFL, in today's NFL. Having a strong dude to start and having the top guys to start, sure, no argument for me there. I completely agree.
I think to play D-line in the league, Richie, real quick, is you want to be known as a 3-down D-lineman. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be known as that guy they bring in just on third downs or first and second, which is common for all teams to do. But I think if you want to reach that upper elite level, you're known as a 3-down guy.
And so then the question is, for the Raiders, in order for you to put yourself in the 2 spot, outside of Wilkins, who, don't get me wrong, he was very good when he was healthy last year. Like he was very good when he was healthy. But who else is elevating that defensive line group to get yourself?
It's Adam Butler.
Okay.
Adam Butler, they just signed him to a 3-year deal, and that's why I was saying I was afraid that he was going to be injured, and he had 5 sacks as playing alongside of Wilkins, and then when Wilkins went down, he took over as the number 1 D tackle on the roster. Where my question would be, again, is besides the health of Wilkins, is going to be the depth in what you have there. Yes, they drafted a couple of 6th-round picks, but I have no idea what they're going to do. And some of the other guys they picked up, they picked them off waivers or practice squads. So it's going to be the depth and I agree with you, it is a rotational piece unless you are that stud like a Chris Jones or a Christian Wilkins, where you're going to go all 3 downs like DZ, said. But the other guys, it's like you may have like a nose tackle who plays the first and second down, and then you bring in more of a pass rushing defensive tackle coming on 3rd down. And then, of course, again, he's been kind of a bust, like Tyree Wilson. I see him playing just as much on the inside, especially on NASCAR, than I do as being on the outside, which I kind of counted him more as in a D tackle room this year than I'm counting him as an edge rusher.
Sure.
What's up? What's up, Mitchell?
I'm simply comparing not just the top guy, but the total depth. I think the top guy for the Chiefs, I think he's just such a league of his own that he commands a certain shift. And I think that other teams must account for Chris Jones in their offensive game plan. And I think that's what kind of sets the Chiefs apart. And then I also think the Chiefs have reasonable depth. I don't think it's fantastic depth compared to some of the other teams. I think some of our depth pieces on, say, for example, the Raiders and the Broncos, once you get past guy, 2, 3, and 4, I think you're starting to get comparative or better. But I think that the top guy is just so good that it just kind of raises the water level of that room to kind of make it, number 1. And I do agree with that ranking. Where you lose me, and I just can't get past the quality of the depth in terms of production, both last year and what is projected this year, is comparing the Raiders to the Broncos. Zach Allen.
Well, I would say that you have two guys that are ranked in a top 32, which is that's why I said I can flip flop at any time with this based on health. But again, when you got a top 10 defensive tackle, you got a Butler who had five sacks and maybe 5.5. And so I consider that top quality. And then again, I see Tyree more on the inside, but as D tackles go, as like you said, yours are kind of light in the tush and can get pushed around a little bit. So, but I will give you the credit. And that's why I said I have had arrows going back and forth, between the two.
Right. So I'll try and get through this, and then you can try to rebut what I'm saying here, Jack, because I fully hear what you're saying. I just can't get myself there with the Raiders in total. Zach Allen finished the season with nearly identical total solo and assisted tackles to Butler, and finished with a higher sack total than Jordan Butler at 8.5. That was Zach Allen. I know DZ's made a couple comments about Zach Allen on the show.
Yeah, he is an animal.
Yeah, he is.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, and then on top of that, as you start going through the additional depth that was on the team or is even on the team now, we have Jordan Jackson returning for second year, who had some flashes last year, but he wasn't, blow the doors off. DJ Jones was re-signed this offseason. He is an excellent interior kind of nose tackle, D tackle. I agree, little lighter than I would prefer, but incredibly productive. And when paired with other guys around him, is even more productive. Like
that's
Zach
key.
Allen.
What
others,
you just said,
right?
What you just said, Richie, is who you got as a partner next to you.
Right. And then we have Malcolm Roach and John Franklin Myers.
That's who I was going to say right there.
Who JFM, Malcolm Roach, DJ Jones, Jordan Jackson, Zach Allen. When you kind of package that group together and look at their total production last season, because they were on the team last season, I simply cannot put the Raiders' interior defensive linemen above my Broncos based on their production and where their ranking was last season. I just can't. I literally just can't. And we've also added some additional guys with a few other returning dudes to the roster who are also a decent depth. Matt Henningsen had some splashes last year as well, and we brought in a new guy, Savion Jones, who has got some big time, again, a little on the lighter side, but has really shown some fantastic splashes in both rookie mini camp as well as the mandatory camps that are going on right now. And so I think we've bolstered the room. Do I still want that big kind of beefy dude in the middle? Yeah. Do I still want the guy kind of that, like I was saying, like that 330, 340 kind of, people eater in the middle? For sure. But I cannot discount the production that I saw from my team in last year's interior defensive line. And it's more than just the one guy.
Nor should you.
It's the total. When you group them together, the production was frankly undeniable when you compare them to others in the league. There's a reason why the Broncos finished with a top 5 defense last year, and their defensive line was a big reason why they finished in that top 5. Although I'm not going to lie, PS2 didn't hurt either. So
they do go hand in hand. Man.
So
I think fans realize that coverage and D line go hand in hand with each other. So if you got a weak secondary and a strong D line, there's only so much you can do. So also chat, if you guys are done bickering. Just kidding.
No, let them bicker. Hey, Nab, good point. Adam Butler's pass rush win rate was 16th in the league last year.
I would like to see their rankings of D line because that's who we're talking about. So,
interior D line for each of our teams. I'd like to see what your guys' thoughts are of if you're a Raiders fan, your divisional opponents compared to yourselves, and if you're a fan of any other teams, I'd like to see kind of where you think your team stacks up against the others in the division as well. And of course, feel free to go at each other in the chat. It's super entertaining from my perspective. I just get to watch.
It is entertaining.
But just curious to see what you guys think of your defensive line, where they rank, etc. And just to kind of finish my rankings there, and I'll just kind of quickly knock the rest out. I have Chiefs 1, Broncos 2, Raiders 3, Chargers 4. I think that's fair based on production we saw last year. Now, I do think that strength of schedule may alter things this year. I also think that returning players will potentially alter that this year. For example, can the Chiefs continue to maintain the level of play they've had, or are we going to see a regression in certain position groups? We'll wait and see. Chris Jones is bound to fall off at some point too, and at that point that completely changes these rankings, right? Like if he starts sliding, then it's really up for grabs between the Raiders and the Broncos, in my opinion, at this stage. Chargers are going to start coming up the rankings too, because their coach is a huge proponent of the lines, and so you're not going to have the Chargers sit in 4th place willingly for that long. The Chargers are going to overperform them where we think they are going to, and eventually some of the unknowns will start becoming knowns because their head coach is just kind of that good.
I agree with your rankings, Richie. I've got the Chargers at 4th. But I've talked about, you guys know I've talked about this a few times, that I feel like the D line's going to end up being a strength for this defense. It just has a lot of unknowns. They're not household names like a Chris Jones or a Wilkins or Zach Allen or DJ Jones. These guys are brought in, from, specific schemes to fit this defensive scheme that Jesse Minter runs in LA. And I'm a big fan of Tier Tart. They brought in some guys, like I've talked about in the past. They have chemistry with each other. And Jesse Minter did talk in a presser. He's like, the loss of Puna, he didn't say it hurts, but he's like, the production of him, we're going to get with multiple other guys, so pretty much just saying, Puna's production, with that one man, we're going to have to make up with multiple guys, and we're like how we're going to do it. And that's what Jesse Minter runs. He cycles guys in and out, every series throughout the game. So it keeps guys fresh. So you're going to have, a rotation of D linemen coming at you. I don't necessarily believe we've got a 3-down back, or 3-down. I keep saying back like a running back, but a 3-down lineman. I would have to say it could be Tier Tart. He's probably my favorite. I could ramble through the names. I know them all, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to get through this ranking. After the season, I think they've got it. They can climb the chart. If we were to talk about this next season, but one thing they gotta correct is stopping the run. stopping the run for them last year wasn't great. And I think that's another reason why they didn't want to pay that tag for Puna. Puna wasn't that great of a run stopper, man. He's a good D lineman, but, it's physics. And the guy they brought in, Jamari Caldwell, much bigger dude, size and weight, stays super square, might not be, out the gate as good as a pass rusher as he was, but has showed that in college when he played at Houston. So this is a guy, Caldwell, I'm really high on, but, I'm going to be chill about it because I was talking to Richie about this off season before the show. I'm like, there's a lot of Bronco hype right now, and I like it. I like that it's cooled off on my team. And to be honest with you guys, it's kind of eerily quiet in Kansas City on the news, and that's never good. So, but yeah, we're all praying for the regression, but as of right now, I agree with Richie's rankings. I've got Kansas City 1, and that's partly due to their scheme they run. That's with Spags. That's how he runs their defense. That's what carried them to the Super Bowl last season. I've got the Broncos 2. I've got the Raiders 3, and I've got the Chargers 4th. We're
all pretty close. Like I said, I had arrows going both ways on that, so that was a tough one. And DZ, so let's go in reverse order, and why don't we start off then talking about the DEs or their edge rushers, because you guys run a different set,
Ooh, this one's kind of tough. This one's kind of tough because I have with my edge room in LA, Max sack production kind of dropped off last season.
Well, rightfully so. Half the season.
No, he didn't miss. Dude.
Oh, Mac. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think he said Max.
But I'm talking the Chargers. Khalil Mack. It's Tuli Pelotu. It's Bud Dupree, who they just signed to an extension. He's a solid depth guy, rotational guy to give, which I believe is going to be the starter. It's going to be Khalil Mack and Tuli on one side. And Khalil Mack just said, I believe today, that he sees Tuli. He's already said he's been a starter. He's going into year 3. This is his position. He sees him as a 10 to 12 sack guy. If he can get that this year, that would be amazing. That would be great. The way I see this edge room right now is more of an edge setter. There's not any really elite pass rushers with the speed. I think Khalil is just getting more settled in as an edge setting kind of guy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say he can't sack a QB because he sure as hell can. We've all seen it.
Sure can. 6 sacks against the Raiders. That didn't feel good.
And they brought in Kyle Kennard, who I think is going to be that speed guy. And another thing that the Chargers are doing, and I'll get through this really quick, is they're cross-training other guys to rush off the edge, being Deion Henley, one of our inside linebackers, and Derwin James. Derwin James last season he played a lot of nickel where he came off the edge. So these guys all work in the edge department. They're just not on the D line. They'll come up. And so there's going to be other ways that they're going to attack the quarterback this year. But as for edge room, I really like Max Crosby. I think that guy's got a motor that doesn't shut off. You can't teach that. You can't coach that. And you pair him with Kuntz, right? I believe it's going to be Kuntz on the other side, I'd assume, right? Yeah.
It is.
Kind of sucks that Tyree hasn't become what you guys thought he was going to be drafting him. There's probably a plethora of reasons why that's happened that way. And I look at what the Chiefs have, and that Greek dude, I keep forgetting his name, but then they got a Menahue. They've got a really good edge room.
Karlaftis,
yes. Yeah. I like him too. He reminds me of Max Crosby, to be honest with you guys. Not just because they're both white skinned, just because they have these motors. This is tough just with an edge room. I'm going to go. Oh, God. We're just going starters. We're not going room. Are we going room or starters? Because This is tough. If we start going into the room,
Well, we just talked about depth on the deep defensive tackles. You can call the whole room if you want to call it.
Just for my ranking, I'm going to go with who I'm going to see on Sundays, like starting right there, because, I don't know who the Broncos have. They're 4 edge guys. What's up? How's it going? Rip it and flip it. That's a good name.
That is a good name. Hey, Matt Marinovich.
I'm going to go. Edge guys, I'm going Raiders, Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers. And, that sounds bad, but look, I got to see it out of Thule as a full-time starter. Bosa's gone, so, that's how I'm going that way.
So if we're going to go true reverse order, I'll go next real quick.
I didn't go reverse order. My bad, guys. I apologize.
No, we did. It's fine. No. It's like that's what I wanted. I wanted you to do. We'll go through Richie, then me, and then I'll do this one and next one.
And then he'll go the next and back and forth. And
yep.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going 4-1, 1-4.
Yeah. So, we're close. I again looked at the overall piece. I'm a huge Max Crosby fan. I think that dude is dangerous as all get up. However, I do have to be realistic with what I saw last year in terms of total production. It is an undeniable fact that Max Crosby had a down year last year compared to what he had the year before and in some of the years past. Now, does that mean that he wasn't a great player? No, he did excellent. In fact, he had some really good stats in other elements of his game. But when you're looking at production, pure production, which is what you're really looking at in the edge room, is getting after the quarterback and those other stats there. Max was a little bit lower, especially in the sack category, than he was in years past. And then you have to look at the total and the grouping, which is what I did in my team versus the others, of the other guys behind him. Now, the Raiders had some pretty decent production in the players past Max Crosby. However, where you can't have me put them above my Broncos is because the production for the depth guys on my Broncos outside backers or edge rushers was just simply higher, especially in the sacks and whatnot. So I simply just couldn't put the total group or even individually guys above my Broncos. And just for the Raiders fans in the chat, because I trust me, you all know how much I like Max Crosby, and this is certainly not a knock on him at all. Nick Medino had 13.5 sacks last year and an interception. Okay, he was in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year. Like he was I think third or something like that in terms of the
balled
votes.
Out last season.
Yeah, he had one heck of a season. Jonathan Cooper, who was the Robin, the guy on the other side of that group, had 10.5 sacks last season, which is again no slouch. So you're talking 24 sacks between the two starters from my Denver Broncos for the 24 season, just between two guys. That's a substantial volume just between those two. And then you go to a rookie who was extremely promising for the Denver Broncos last year in Jonah Ellis, drafted last year. He had 5 sacks as a rookie. And so he's already putting himself into that production category where if he can continue this production climb as he moves up the ladder and whatnot, you have every right to believe that in his second year, he should be in the seven sack or higher category if the Broncos and him can continue his production and his development. So those are just the 3 guys, just quick glance looking at them and just kind of seeing what they have. Now, statistically, and certainly based on past production, like going back past 2024, I think you'd have a hard time not siding with Max Crosby and the Raiders because Max Crosby is very much like a Chris Jones. But I'm simply looking at what I saw from production last year and extrapolated it out to the depth as well that are behind the guy. And with that in mind, my rankings are 1 through 4, Denver Broncos, Raiders, Chiefs, Chargers.
And look, this is why I'm showing I'm not biased. Chargers had the number 1 scoring defense last season. Okay, they were by 2 points over Philadelphia, but
Correct.
I'm talking about going into this season, and I know we have a much harder schedule coming up. So that's where my rankings are all coming through. Is I'm talking about this season. This is my prediction this season. Does that mean I think my defense is gonna suck? No, not at all.
No.
I just don't think they're going to be a number one scoring next season.
And we're only talking, edge rushers, not the overall defense as well. And, DZ, NAB 93, you'll see him as Raider Family Shield or Shield Family. He's wondering if you have your own channel, or if you don't, do you plan on doing one?
I do plan on doing one, and I'd like to piggyback, like Captain Jack does, and it's something I'm thinking about, doing more of a Captain Jack style. But that's something I'm thinking about, maybe getting closer to the season, maybe launching my own channel, and but still also doing with the Wild West, like I would stream from the, how it mirrors, right? How everybody shares off this chat. But yeah, much appreciated. But yeah, eventually, sure, but no rush. But yeah, definitely like to talk ball, man.
Absolutely. So, Richie, I'm going to, agree to disagree again, just for the simple fact that, again, if we're looking at last year's production, I got zero production from Mountain Koontz because he got hurt in preseason. So before that, he got 8 sacks in the last 9 games from the year before. Max, I forgot what he had. I think 12 or something like that. And not only is he he can rush the ball. He's also super stout and run stuff in the ball, and he's a game changer. Like, again, you said it yourself, like a Chris Jones. So when I put those two cats, healthy.
Sorry. Crosby, sorry, I heard that. I didn't hear the name come through. Crosby's sack production in 2024 was 7.5.
No, that's what I'm saying. Last year, he started off with a high ankle sprain, which is going to hinder anybody. And then he had his other injury, which took him out and had to have surgery. So he only played in a limited amount of games. So I can't just base the stats and the rankings that I'm going to be giving when both these players are now coming back healthy. So, again, he's a game wrecker, a game changer. He's one of the few players that you can look at like a Chris Jones and, you go, okay, this guy's a game changer. So with that being said, for me, it was pretty, and I love and I got your Broncos number 2, and I have them as a solid number 2, not even close to the other AFC West teams. But right now, I just got to say, based on what we have and healthy and knowing what these guys can produce, and again, even, Tyree, again, I said call mostly on the inside, but he will be playing on the outside too. Snowden is coming back, for us. So I like what they got. I would, again, depth wise, I would probably say your team's a little bit deeper, but I think, the quality of the starters, again, being game changers, like overall game changers, not like if you go to anyone in the NFL, you mentioned the name Max Crosby, everyone's going to know it. And yes, you got great players. Benito's a stud. Your other, edge rusher is a stud as well too. I won't argue that. I got you as a solid number 2. And then, I agree with what you guys have said on the other ones. I got KC, and then I got the Chargers. I had a tough time with that one a little bit, but losing Bosa, and you get how long? Raider Nation, everyone in the chat everyone loves Mac. Mac is like, he's going to be a fan favorite from anyone who's ever seen him.
Mac is built differently. I think people have to realize that he's like playing in a genre. He should be playing in a different genre because this guy he's a Ted. He's the there every day type of guy. This whole thing when the Chargers signed him, like, oh, he's going to be injured. Like, the dude has been nothing but solid since he's been in LA. Like, he is.
Been nothing solid his whole career.
I mean, I think there was maybe Raider fans were upset when the Chargers traded for him, I guess, from Chicago. I get it. It's fine. He's a stud, dude. We love him, and when he's gone, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt because you're also losing a guy who just plays football the right way, in my opinion.
And he is a generational talent, in my opinion. And he's a fan favorite here. We as Raider fans, we miss him. It's like we were kind of hoping that we would get him back as long as, the contract's not going to be too huge. But, that didn't happen because, we would love for, it's going to be interesting when he retires. I wonder where he's going to retire at. Because, he's kind of
weird.
Because he's all dispersed. He doesn't like. It's like he's drafted by the Raiders. He played through his rookie contract. Gets there was that mammoth trade, to go to the Bears. Played there for like just as many seasons, and now he's playing for your team. By the time his career is done, he's going to have probably about an even number of games playing for each team.
So he was 4 years in Oakland, 4 years in Chicago, 3 years in LA. And I think his best defensive, I think the best defense he was on, was in Chicago that 1 year. But, the first year in LA, he had 17 sacks, and then he had a coming back down to earth moment last season where it was only 6. The sacks on the defense last season went way down, D-line wide. So
go look up his 2016 numbers.
His 16 numbers, he had 11 sacks, but he had a better year in 15. That's 15 sacks.
And look at this,
But I'm starting to look,
pass breakups, interceptions, and one of them even got a pick 6.
I look past sacks now, I think, as I'm getting older. I'm looking at pressures. I'm looking at the whole thing, like if you're a complete edge guy. Because sure, there's guys that we've seen throughout this league that just rush the QB, and they acquire a lot of sacks. But, how about the plays where they're running by guys and then running backs catching a ball behind them so sacks are great. I think it's amazing, but if
it's not everything, because
exactly.
Look at what Mac has done against the run. It's kind of the same thing like Max Crosby. They're stout against the run. It's like they do all the phases well.
I played that in high school. That's why I'm a big fan of edge guys. I played in high school. I remember my coach always he'd be like, Wilson, they're coming at you. Set the goddamn edge. We had this sign, Longhorn, Longhorn. He'd be screaming. They'd be all on the sidelines, run up and down, Longhorn. And that I'd line up real wide. They're like, because that meant I had no help, right? So they're like, that's you. And I remember real quick, we were playing a team we didn't really play much, and they're screaming at me, and I was lined up wrong. So I bounce outside and try not to get a penalty. And I bounce outside. I got nobody, no tackles touching me, nothing. I'm like, oh, this is great. I got the edge set. And a QB comes running right at me. And I don't know what I was thinking, not paying attention. I grab him, and I thought he did like a juke move and ran, faked me to the outside and came inside, better athlete than I was. And I thought I grabbed him and threw him down. But what I did is I grabbed him by his face mask and I threw him into the ground just by his face mask. And I was like, wasn't even looking. And I was like, yes. And I looked to my sideline and they're like, God damn it. They're just so pissed. And I see the laundry come out and I'm like, what did I do? What did I do? And they're like, dude, you slammed him by his head, man. And I'm like, oh, God. So it was a 15-yard penalty, but, we ended up winning that game. So no.
Yeah, did he get benched?
No, luckily we didn't get benched because we didn't have anybody to take my spot. I very rarely got breathers until later in that year. But, yeah, it was fun.
So,
all right, we all pretty much agree, what we have out there for the most part. We're still.
So Jack,
and I like this. I like that we're not all over the place. It's not craziness. It's like, for the most part, 3 out of 4 again we agree with.
Yeah.
Except for one blip.
So Jack, just to be clear here, though, based on your 2 rankings, you are basically trying to predict that your defensive line in totality is effectively going to be the best in the entire AFC West.
Ooh.
Well, no, I didn't say
No,
no.
no, no,
I
no,
said
no, no,
Kansas
no.
City's defense attack. Yes.
No. Don't
Oh, yeah, as a
backpedal on that
totality?
crap now. Don't
Oh, as a
backpedal on that
totality?
crap
Yeah.
now. You're either going to own what you said or you're not. So
No, I'm gonna own what I
Damn.
said. Don't jump in and cut me off. Yeah, as a totality, yeah, that is the strength of the whole defense is right there. Now, when we get to all the other stuff, yeah, that tone's going to change.
Yeah, Jack, you kind of did. I agree. You kind of did.
I mean, you got to support your team. Look, I said I have faith in my D line. I've said it. Well, it's like a broken record. I think they're going to be a strength rather than a weakness, but I can't go in predicting them anything above fourth in this division, just knowing what you guys have on your teams. Now, what's to say this looks like week 10? Who knows?
The thing with the Chargers, and this is what's so difficult to predict, is a lot of your guys are new, and your team is still your team is still growing into the new head coach that you have there. And what you need to kind of start focusing on with your team in particular is, to your point earlier, you don't have the household names, but if they are the right cog in the right system and they all mesh together and kind of present as a united front, they don't necessarily need to be the household name to be exceptional. They can be just as dangerous as, the household name, and you've never heard of the dude before.
That's the Raven way they brought to LA, man. It's exactly what they did in Baltimore, and that's what they're doing in LA. They bring in guys that nobody's heard about, or, unless you're a fan of that team they left, Detroit or Tennessee or whatever. That's their mantra. But,
Nav, I'm not denying it, man. Based on both rankings, yeah. I will say that. Absolutely.
So,
but now we need to get to the rest of the team. Again, the game's not won or lost just from the front. We got to go through everybody else. So this is where things start to change. So I'll go the first on this one. Even signing a new linebacker, which again, it's a blessing because we don't have more than one outside linebacker or will linebacker and Mari Gaynor until today. And I don't know much. I don't know much about Pratt. I can only base off of what the little bit of stats I saw, but to me, it doesn't move the needle in, as the overall position rankings within our division. I mean, this to me is pretty straightforward. I mean, the Raiders are definitely, after losing Spillane, now things may have changed if Spillane would have been here, but Spillane's not here. And I'm still not happy with the Raiders. That contract is reasonable. You got $36 million in cap space. And you're paying this guy like $4.8 million. Spillane cost 11.
Richie was saying something real quick. Go ahead, Rich.
I want to just make sure, Jack, that you're not like discounting who you just got. So I'm
not discounting him, but I don't know enough about him. I just said it doesn't move the needle so far for me.
Right, but that's what I'm trying to get at here, right? Is we made several comments on the show about how much, like when we were talking on this show about Alex Singleton, and you were like, "Oh yeah, but I have Spillane," and then you looked at Singleton's stats and you looked at Spillane, and you're like, "Oh, like Singleton,
Singleton's a beast.
Singleton is like an animal, right?" And I agree, he had quite the stats. But what if I told you that your new linebacker that you just signed had better stats than Singleton and Spillane?
Oh, man, I just don't know enough about him yet, man. It's like, again, I was working today, and then when DZ sent that, I just don't know enough about him. So it's hard for me to judge him from the little basics that I saw and knowing what you guys got. So I can't put myself, again, if this show was like maybe next week and, I get more research done on him, then, I can change my tune. But I just don't have that much information on Pratt. And I know Raider Nation wants wanted him. It's like, they were talking about Jair Alexander or Pratt. Like, who would you want more of? And so, yeah, I'm hoping Pratt's better, a huge upgrade over Roberts. Roberts, like, he's a middle linebacker. He's a 2-down linebacker. He lost his job when Baltimore got that, or not Baltimore, when Steelers got that linebacker from Baltimore, who's an all-pro. So his spot on the field from the 2 years before would average over 100 tackles, went down to 40 tackles. So I only see him as a 2-down linebacker, which, puts me at, it's like, man, we really need off-ball linebackers, and that's what I'm hearing this Pratt guy is. So I'm hopeful, but again, I just don't know enough about him. Again, since the news was just broken to me today, and I was at work, so it was very limited of what. There's no tape seen. I haven't seen any other shows on him yet, so it's hard for me to really gauge the player and how much of an upgrade that's going to be.
It's definitely going to help, man. Definitely going to be a big help. So, did we go through the rankings? Are we doing inside linebackers? Is that what we're doing?
I'm just doing. Now we're just doing. Inside linebackers. Okay, so we're doing inside linebackers. That's all I got. So really, that's all Raiders have is two inside backers based on their defense. They run a lot of nickel, so primarily they use 2 linebackers and a nickel corner. That's their primary defense. So I'm only counting on the 2 guys. So if we had Pratt and you got Landon Roberts, like those are the 2. Right now I would have to kind of say they're sitting at number 4 until I know more. That's the only thing I can say on that. It's not like a guy that's a household name where it's like a player that's all pro. So yeah, I don't know much about the kid, to be honest with you. And then I'm going to the Bolts. Number 3 at this point. And again, it's just the Raiders linebackers are so bad as a whole. That's where I'm going that route. Then I have to go KC. I like what they got there. But then it's an easy pick for Denver. I mean, that's a given. Yeah. Nab. Again, haven't seen any tape. And I know Nab said he wanted to come on at some point to talk about him if you ever want him on. He said he would also, if I ever was sick, he said he would help out the show as well before to me in private.
He and I are going to chat after separately. So Raider Shield, reach out to me on X. It's the fastest way to get a hold of me. Send me a quick DM, assuming you follow me or what have you, and we'll chat.
Nab, I can send Richie your phone number. So if you want.
Yeah, and so Raider Nation bully Kenna into getting an X account. How about that? Just kidding.
Yes, a lot of that. Do a lot of that. A lot of demanding that he get an X account. That's where's you, Jack. But so
I hate X. That's where all the football. That's where all the news comes out. Raider Shield.
Yeah. So with regards to your rankings, Jack, just to reiterate, you had Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. If we're doing reverse order, I guess that puts me next. I agree. That's basically the order I have it as well. Obviously, just because I obviously have the additional information there. I also really like the 2 or 3 UDFA inside backers that my Broncos have. They are, I think some of them are going to be starting to push for roster spots. And then the other guy that a lot of people are really sleeping on for my Denver Broncos is Lavelle Bailey, who's now in his 2nd year and was a UDFA that we ended up keeping on the 53-man roster right from the get-go last season at the inside backer position as well. So, you have Alex Singleton at the inside backer. You have Dre Greenlaw, Drew Sanders, who is now finally landed back at the inside backer spot that he should have been at all along. I've never been a fan of Justin Strnad, but He did fill in briefly for a while in my Broncos and looked serviceable, and then slowly, we'll call it deteriorated badly. And I think Stranad's actually going to be replaced by Lavelle Bailey. So then you end up with Singleton, Greenlaw, Sanders, and Bailey. And then my team's going to have one heck of an issue selecting the fourth between J.B. Brown and Karen Reed. And even Jordan Turner, for example. Those three UDFAs, all three of them are looking like absolute beasts at the inside backer position. Turner, for example, if I'm not mistaken, has had one of the best run stop or run defensive numbers in college football last year for inside backers. He was like number 1 or number 2.
Turner.
Turner, yeah.
Why am I not getting his first name? Turner.
Jordan Turner.
Jordan Turner.
But it's something along those lines. I remember looking at the stat when we brought him in as a UDFA and saying, how did that guy not even get drafted? But I think he may have been hurt and then kind of came in after the fact or something like that. But he's fully healthy now, and he's with the team and doing his thing. But when you look at the totality of depth in the inside backer room now, which was traditionally a major weakness for the Denver Broncos, I'm cautiously optimistic that we finally turn that around.
And I got to say this, just of a cool side note. Yeah, and Richie, you have one of the coolest names ever in your linebacking room is Johnny Walker Jr.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know about his play style, but that is one of the coolest jersey names ever.
Yeah, he's an outside backer.
But what a cool name, man. Johnny Walker Jr.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of covered the edge rushers, which is what our outside backers are for my Denver Broncos, right? But I didn't even get to discuss the rookie Q Robinson, who has had some really positive things that have come out about him in camp and in the defensive plays. But, I mean, right now we're no pads and it's against air and all that sort of thing. So the whole thing is you really want to see what the guys look like with pads. And frankly, you really want to see the guys against opposing teams in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the real evaluation comes up for these guys on the defensive side of the ball and offensive linemen. When you're looking at that depth and you're wanting to see where the depth and maybe where some of the starters might shake out, it's really the preseason games that are going to help define that for you in terms of their performance in it. So,
and usually, go.
But anyways, my ranking is 1, 2, 3, Broncos, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders.
Do you guys teams do joint practices? Because I know under Staley, we had joint practices with teams, and I don't think we did that last season. I kind of hope they bring it back because that was a really good time at camp to kind of see these guys come through. Even some of these depth guys, some of these UDFA guys in these combined practices, I thought were really cool. I don't know if Harbaugh's going to do that. Kind of wish they'd bring it back. It was kind of fun to see. If he misses it, okay. So linebackers, inside linebackers, I'm going to go Broncos number 1. That's easy. I love their linebackers. And then I'm going to say Chiefs second, just because I really like their linebacking room as well. Really good linebacking room. They got one of our ex-guys, Drew Tranquil, over there. And then a room I really like is my Chargers linebacking room. One of my favorite picks from last year's draft was a complete dud his rookie year was Junior Colson, who was supposed to take over that linebacker duty, that green dot. But Deion Henley, who begged to get playing time under the Staley regime, never got any playing time. Staley just didn't value linebackers. Last season has an almost all-pro season, just completely badass on the field. Number 0, you guys are going to see plenty of him. He's all over the field. And then Troy Dye, they brought in this guy from Minnesota who was kind of like this special teams guy in Minnesota, but played a lot of meaningful snaps late in the season, kind of being that rotational guy coming in. And Denzel Perriman, Raider fans are familiar with him. Another kind of that mold of Khalil Mack. They played from a different genre. But this guy expects to get hurt because he's like, that's my play style. I'm gonna play and I'm gonna get hurt or I'm gonna hurt somebody else, which I really like. But I got them 3. It's a fun group of guys. I really like our inside linebackers. I think they have a chance to ascend, especially because they're really young. This core with Junior Colson and Dan Henley, they're a very young group, and I think that they're just going to get better and better. And if you guys are familiar with Junior Colson, he was on that national championship with Jesse Minter and Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, and they brought him over. So he just didn't have a really good start to last season with his appendectomy, and I believe he had an ankle injury right out the gate. So the dude just had a bad start this season. So hoping this year. And then I got the Raiders as 4th. Not saying they're bad. I'm just saying I like my linebacking crew a little better until they're proven as, like, say, a duo or a room. I can't put them over the Chiefs or Broncos right now. I think those are 1 and 2. Very close in my opinion.
We agreed. All of us had the same on this.
God, it sounds like an ankle biter, man.
It does.
It's my ankle biters.
Mailman beware. So DZ, up next, we're going to get into the cornerback rooms of the teams.
Yeah.
And then we'll go from there.
I think this is easy, but not.
Apologize about the dogs.
Yeah, no worries, dude. I'm just going to say number 1's going to be the Denver Broncos. Like, it's just easy, man. Like, come on. It's a no-brainer.
Cornerback?
Yes. I believe they probably might have the best cornerback room in the league right now, if not maybe top 3. It's a no effing brainer in my opinion. Now 2, definitely going to give it to the Chiefs with McDuffie over there, right? Like, I think they even got him a good pair. I don't think it was this season, but what's that other guy's name that they have paired with him over there? It's not Snead. Is chat, help me out. I think his pairing cornerback. It's not Scott, not Smith.
So
Watson,
cornerback, there's Jalen Watson.
Watson,
Watson, and then there's Christian Fulton they drafted.
No, Christian Fulton was a Charger last season. So
Christian Fulton, and then McDuffie.
Yeah. So they brought over Christian Fulton, who started out really well for the Chargers last season, and then just kind of teetered off, but had a really good first half of the season. So we'll see what he gets over in Kansas City. But I got that number 2, and then I know that I'm going to say 3 for the Chargers because it's Cam Hart, Raheem Steele.
I like this with Cam Hart.
Well, Cam Hart, unfortunately, with his shoulder, but he's cleared. He's been back at camp. He's been at the mandatory. He is practicing, so we're assuming that his shoulder is fine. Really like this. This is another young duo I'm really excited about. Just like the linebackers, inside linebackers, they played exceptionally well last season. I know that the Raiders, Pete has a certain style of cornerback he likes. He likes these big, tall guys. So I could see the Raiders cornerbacks climbing, but I'm just not convinced on the guys they brought over in that cornerback room. I don't know if Jack, you feel the same way. Like, I know they brought over Jermaine Johnson and some of these other guys, and I'm just not totally sold on them. But I know that Pete has a certain style of guys, so we'll see. It's just they're definitely not the guys that he had in Seattle during his tenure in Seattle, but I would have to go Denver, Kansas City, LA, Las Vegas in the cornerback department as my rankings.
Denver, KC. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think you simply need the guys to show out. You know what I mean? You need the guys to come out and prove that they can leapfrog the other guys within the division. I also think that, Jahdae Barron, for example, based on college play at least, is an upgrade over McMillan, who was also no slouch in the NFL last year either. Like even McMillan is a starting caliber nickel corner for a good percentage of the NFL teams, if not the overwhelming majority. And so, there's a bit of an embarrassment at riches in the cornerback room there for the Denver Broncos, and of course Riley Moss as well mixed in there. And so, I really do think that the corner room for my Denver Broncos is a pretty stacked room, and I think that's a fair comment to make. But you're not going to be able to keep all of them, right? You can't pay Pat Surtain what he's getting paid now, and then you can't keep Moss, and you can't keep Barron. You're just not going to have the money, and then by then Bo Nix is going to have to get paid as well. So you're going to have to start prioritizing these different guys and these different position groups.
Can I say something real quick? Just to my cornerback room. With the departure of Fulton going to Kansas City, I kind of like what they did they brought in some not UDFAs, but some free agents, Dante Jackson and Benjamin St. Juste. And let's just say St. Juste was welcome to get out of Washington. But Dante Jackson from Pittsburgh plays really well in a zone scheme that Minter runs. So I like that they brought in some vets, not saying to kind of help with these younger cornerbacks with the departure of Fulton. I like what they did. They're bringing in these dudes kind of similar to your guys' running back situation in Denver. So that's just one thing I wanted to touch on. I kind of like how they're mixing dudes up, but they know who is probably going to be the future of this team is these young guys. Damn,
I agree. So, Jack,
is that true?
What?
50 interceptions the last 4 seasons? I don't know if that's true. There's no way that's true. Really?
Yeah, it doesn't seem right. If it is, I'm glad. Hope he throws 50 more one season.
Yeah, he's throwing 50.
So Richie, you kind of cut out. So what was your overall rankings?
Yeah, sorry about that, Rich.
Denver 1, KC 2, Chargers 3, Raiders 4.
What do you think, Jack?
Well, I heard Denver 1, KC, then was it Chargers, then Raiders?
Yeah.
Richie? Sorry, I'm losing you guys. Did I have it right? Okay.
Yes.
And I got to agree with it. So Raiders are pretty darn young. Like Jacorian Bennett, who had a shoulder injury, who's definitely our best cornerback. He's back and healthy. He said this is the best he's felt, in years. So I'm really excited about that. Getting Derry Porter, a total Pete Carroll's guy, almost 6'4", runs a 4.3 flat 40. But he's coming over from being, an offensive weapon at wide receiver. Now he's going to be a defensive back. He's got that kind of Richard Sherman type mold, that's out there. But I just look at the overall depth, and then you got Decorian Richardson, another guy who's like 6'3", runs a 4.3 something, but he did okay his rookie season, but not great. And then we look at Harmon, as our slot corner. That's the one that hurts me. I heard some stuff that Jeremy Chin, which is our safety, may actually get some slot corner time. They may go 3 safeties at some point here. But again, I'm going to leave the safeties for the safety room, so I'm not going to include them in this. So I think it's an easy one. I think the Raiders are going to be number 4. And I got the Chargers, and Hart to Notre Dame boy. Everyone knows that I love Notre Dame. I saw him play there, and I thought he played pretty darn well. So as a whole, and I know what he can bring when he's healthy. So I like that. Then you got KC, you got McDuffie, and some of the cats they have on that roster, and it's not even a question.
Right.
It is not even a question who's number 1. I mean, I said this like during the draft to you guys in the chat. I'm like, that's the no-fly zone now.
Yeah.
That is absolutely the no-fly zone. I mean, shoot, you got Defensive Player of the Year in Surtain. You draft the best, defensive, best quarterback that's coming out in the draft, and the depth's already good there as well. It's like, it's not even close. I mean, I wonder, if Denver will probably, surpass everybody and be number 1. I think what you said, possibly number 1 in the entire league. And it's not even be close. I mean, the only one I can see is maybe competing is the Eagles with, what they have on the back end. But I still, man, I got Denver. It's like, and it's not close. I'm jealous of that defensive back group. I had that. But yeah, Denver's going to rock it, dude. I just hope my wide receivers can do something against them.
Agree, dude.
So Jack, we'll kick it off with you and round out the other DB room in safeties. Yeah,
this was a little bit, tougher because I like, again, I'm always going to start off just talking about this one. I go back and forth between the Chargers and the Raiders because we got Jeremy Chin, who's like a Swiss Army knife, and I think he's definitely as good, if not better, than Morrig. As being able to do anything. Like you can play him at the free, you can play him on the strong side, you can play him at a linebacker position, on a third down, and you can play him as a slot, corner if you really need to. He's like a Swiss Army knife. Again, another 6'3" guy. And even with that being said, I love the fact Polamalu was our second guy that we signed. He's 6'4", and he's related to Troy Polamalu. He showed, everyone last year he can be a starter in the NFL. So this is where I have my arrows going back and forth. And, I'm going to have to say it number 4, I'm going to have to say it number 4, but slightly. When you got the Chargers, you got Derwin James. If he stays healthy, he is absolutely one of the best safeties in the NFL, and he's been that way, all pro for years. And you can never, underrate that. I mean, I don't really know that my iPad, again, I'm not connecting with you guys, so it went out to look at the kid's name, which I was going to talk about. I mean, he seems like he's a solid player, but he's not a household name either in my mind, at least as a Raiders fan who doesn't follow the Chargers. But when you got a Derwin James on your team, oh yeah. And then I got KC coming in number 2. And again, when you pick up that, how do you say it? Funga, something from the Niners, and you already had the safety that you had on that squad.
Fuaga?
No, Fuaga's the offensive tackle. Richie, help me out. Who's that guy? Hufanga. So you pick him up and add it to the safeties that you already have. I mean, again, on the back end, that's why I'm going to call it the no-fly zone, because this team, it's like there's not a back end that's like this in the entire NFL.
Didn't the Chiefs lose their good safety last in this offseason? I'm pretty sure they lost the guy in free agency.
Let's have a look.
Yeah, again, I'm being disconnected, so I can't look at it. And I was going to talk about it, but I don't have access to it. Kind of sucks on my iPad.
They have Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks. And then they have Mike Edwards that they brought in, and Chamari Connor. Those would be kind of the top four in the safety room for the Chiefs.
But yeah, but I think they lost. Who they lost was a big deal.
Yeah, they get Jaden Hicks, Brian Cook, Deion Bush, Mike Edwards, Glennon Miller, Kevin Knowles.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Chris Jones, Marcus Brown, Michael Wharton. They re-signed. I can't see who they lost. I'm trying to find that. I think you might be right.
If you guys know who's the free agent safety that the Chiefs lost this offseason, somebody paid him money. He went somewhere else.
I'm just trying to look here. I thought you were right.
Somebody paid him a boatload of money. Oh, well.
So, Nap, what do you think of my ranking on safeties, bro?
Oh, Reed. Okay.
Oh, Justin Reed.
Justin Reed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. That was like their dude. Thanks, dude. Thanks.
Yeah, he was very good, and he was a. Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought he was actually on the roster. To be honest with you.
No,
this is why this will go into my rankings.
Yeah. So, DZ, how about you go first, and I'll go after.
Sure. So at number 4, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, and that has to do with the departure of Justin Reed. Now, look, Spags, he's a great defensive play caller. So I'm just looking at the room as a whole.
I want to change mine up.
Comparative to the division, I've got number 3. I've got the Las Vegas Raiders. I like that addition that Jack said with Jeremy Chin. I think he's going to be huge in Graham's defense. And then number 3, I have the Broncos. I really like their secondary as a whole. Number 1, I have the Chargers. Hands down, I think it's the best safety room in the division. Derwin James, Tony Jefferson, Alohi Gilman. And then the Chargers have cornerbacks, defensive backs, and safeties. So their defensive backs play hybrid roles with the safeties. So they have a ton of defensive backs. And one of the guys that they signed who was with us last season, I really loved. God, what? I have like these names on the tip of my tongue, and then I just forget them. But he's Elijah Molden. So Elijah Molden will play some safety, will play some cornerback. I love the way the defensive backs play in the system, especially with Minter, Dean Leonard as well. Jasir Taylor, nope, I want him gone, but he's still there. And then one of the rookies they brought in, RJ Mickens, his dad played. This is another guy I think has a chance to crack the 53, especially if he can play special teams. But it's number 1, Derwin James, what he can do. The only other guy I believe in the league that rivals him is the guy with the Ravens. It's just a hybrid, man. This guy can play as nickel. He can play deep safety, but you don't really want him playing deep safety as much. But if you can get a safety that, can get down towards the line of scrimmage, can cover some of the, the elite tight ends in the game. Kelsey, look who we got in this division. I mean, you got Kelsey and Bowers, and God, they're a handful. So you really want a dude who can handle covering some of these elite tight ends. So that's mine. I've got, just shy of that, I've got the Broncos, but one, I'm taking the Chargers, and you can say I'm biased, but you guys saw my rankings throughout the show. Definitely not being biased on that, in my opinion.
And before Richie does his, okay, I thought Reed was still on the squad, so that's why I had KC number 2. So I'm changing. I got Denver 1, I got the Chargers 2, and then I got the Raiders 3. I got KC 4. I thought Reed was on the roster, so that changes everything.
This was the hardest one for me out of almost all of them, to be quite honest, in terms of ranking things. This is I might actually pull a DZ here and go 1A, 1B kind of deal.
Yeah, I like that. I like doing
that. I really have struggled to prioritize starters versus depth and how to rank the starters. I think that there is I think the Denver group, when you look at what Hufanga was able to do before he got hurt, and then when you look at what Jones did, who didn't really get hurt last year, he was excellent. And so you kind of look at that pairing with Denver, and that is a elite safety room, to be sure. And then you got some additional depth there in the safety room for my Denver Broncos with Turner Yell. And you got PJ Locke, who was a starter last year, although he struggled at times, but he was still a starter and actually played, at times well, and at times he struggled. So it's, you take the good with the bad there. So the point is, when you look at the totality of the Denver Broncos room, plus focusing solely on those first 2 starters, I really have struggled to, one, I believe that they stack up very well against the Chargers room in terms of, A versus B, health versus no health, so on and so forth. So I think they stack up pretty well against the Chargers. I would probably give the edge to the Chargers if I had to choose, simply because the guys that the Chargers have, they've already had, and we've seen them and what they look like and how they played. But I think that so long as Hufanga and Jones can stay on the field together, I actually think that they will outperform the Chargers duo if they can stay healthy. That's the caveat there.
I could see that with from an overall defensive scheme. But one thing, kind of talking about the defense as a whole, the Broncos, I think from division-wise, Raiders, Chiefs, I know we don't have a Chiefs guy here. Hopefully we can get one. You look at who the Broncos brought in, Hufanga, Greenlaw on the defense. But I would say there's a huge cautionary to these guys that they brought in, and that's the games that these guys have missed. Hufanga and Greenlaw, I believe Greenlaw's 36 games he's missed over his career. Hufanga missed 17 games over the last 2 seasons. So you are banking that these dudes are healthy. Now I know Denver has depth, okay, because I did look at their roster. I know they have depth. So it's just, and they're big names, and I love Hufanga. I love the way he plays. He plays like he's got his head set on fire. But these are also cautionary stuff about these guys. And that's something that I noticed with the Chargers. They brought in a few guys that have some injury histories. They took some banks on, but then they brought in other guys who people are like, why'd you get this guy? Why'd you bring in this guy? Well,
gets hurt.
It's because they play every game, and it's not just Najee. There's some other guys, and they'll probably come to my head. They were talking about these guys just play every game. They're not sexy names, like Dobbins. Unfortunately, Dobbins, we talked about him earlier. Dobbins has missed 43 games in his career, and I said it. I still love him, and I definitely would still take a chance on him, especially if I was Denver. And if we didn't get the guys we got this offseason, I would have loved to have him back. But so there's some cautionary tale up in Denver, in my opinion.
Well, there is, but at the same time, the Denver's defense is so deep. You're taking the risk on paying a better player as a whole, but if they are lost to injury, you're not dropping off that far.
Sure.
So I mean, when you're that deep, you can afford to take a couple, some risk picks. And I saw the Raiders doing the opposite.
Yes.
After all the injuries last year, they went after guys that are not getting hurt. Again,
They did the Telesco
the
thing.
old cliche goes, the best ability is availability. But the Raiders' defense is definitely not as deep as Denver's defense, where you can just look at it and go, okay, well, we already got a guy that's pretty damn good. If you get hurt, we'll throw him in there. Where if you do that on
That's
my
something
team,
that I saw.
it's a huge drop-off.
And that's something I saw. It was a breath of fresh air last season. So when we had guys go down on the defensive side of the ball, Jesse Minter, I believe in a few seasons he's going to be a household name. He's going to be a head coach somewhere. He had the guys. He could. It wasn't like they skipped a beat when somebody went down for a few games. They had guys. They brought in other guys, and they picked up the scheme really well. So that's Jack. You had the Telesco treatment, man. Unfortunately, is he would go out and bring in these sexy names like that Wilkins or whoever, but then the depth was never there. It was never there in LA, man, for almost a decade or when he was in San Diego or LA, whatever.
Well, Telesco didn't bring him in.
But
It was the previous GM that brought in Wilkins. So Telesco did what you expect Telesco to do. Yeah, he missed the whole last year. I think it was the regime before.
You might be right. I thought Telesco brought in Wilkins.
Yeah, I think he brought in Wilkins in the offseason, and then that was a huge signing for you guys because you finally had someone to pair with Crosby.
I
mean, it's a possibility. It was his first year, so you might be right. But, yeah, that was like a –
And then this offseason, you got rid of – you canned Telesco, and then you kept Champ Kelly around, and then you eventually let Kelly go too much later, but eventually let him go as well. And then I think he went to like the Dolphins or something. But
something
But
something
I'm
seeing in this league. Right. Go ahead, sorry, Richie. Something I'm seeing in this league. I mean, we have 17 games, right? They have preseason games. Hearing that Goodell wants to add another game to the season, which is crazy. I think they're going to have to expand the rosters, in my opinion. But it's just depth is so freaking huge, and that's one of the reasons I feel like the Eagles were so unstoppable. Is their depth were starters all the way through, it seemed like. And that's credit to their GM and how the draft has felt to them, and then the trades they make, So.
And going back before then, it was the Patriots. So it's like when these guys need to go and their contracts are going to be so big, they're getting comp third-round picks. So a third-round pick should be a starter.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that's why you're seeing coaches like Sean Payton and, like, for example, Goodell is already testing the waters with the health and stuff like that with what he is doing with the practice squad. So he's already mucking about with health and roster and all that kind of stuff with multiple call-ups from the practice squad, an expanded practice squad, all that kind of stuff. And so they're already kind of starting to hint at, whether it be an expanded roster or some kind of funny business when it comes to using the practice squad as the expanded roster to try to allow for that extra game to be slotted in. And the plan also, from what I've heard, and this is just kind of, I had enough people say it to me that at some point, like, if you keep hearing the same thing, it's like, okay, is they're looking to add another bye week.
I'm glad you brought that up, Richie.
They're looking to add another bye week, and then they're adding another game. And then what the goal is to have the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, fall on, is it President's Day?
I didn't hear that.
So it's like a week later. It's like a week later or 2 weeks later or something like that. They're trying to aim for the long weekend. They're trying to aim for the Super Bowl to fall on that long weekend in the, early part of the year, right? So they're trying to have it land on the long weekend. They're trying to maximize viewership. They're trying to maximize alcohol consumption at bars to really kind of stack all of the things in the NFL's favor for that expanded season, and in turn, just so that we're clear, also maximize that additional revenue that's going to come into the league, so that the salary cap so the salary cap can again keep going up. So
Yeah.
it's all a business, and Goodell, as much as he's a bit of a jerk, he is no dummy, and he has expanded the league. To his credit,
I mean,
he has absolutely done it.
we're seeing the globalization of the league. I mean, they're partnering teams with countries and whatnot, like Rams have got Australia, and certain teams have got this and that country. And call me a boomer, which I'm not, but I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest with you. I like the exhibition games, but I feel like they're increasing too much, and these guys preach player safety and whatever. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's safe. It's but one thing, Rich, you kind of hinted on, you talked about the bye week. If they do increase the to 18 games, one of the things I saw or somebody suggested is I think they should have like an all-star break, essentially, where the whole league, and I know that they would hate to do this because that's revenues, the whole league gets the same bye week. Because I know they like to spread it out, but we've seen it. What's the earliest bye week you can get? I believe is
week 4, week 5, isn't
something
it?
like that. And
Week
I've seen
4.
teams get bye weeks all the way to week 14. And in my opinion, none of that sounds fair. In my opinion, like I kind of wish they did something like baseball, where it's like halfway through the season, they shut down, maybe have their exhibition, and that's when the whole league gets a bye week, and then they pick up the second half of the season. I feel like that would seems a little more fair, a little more even, but life's not fair, I guess.
I made a quick error. There's another piece that I missed in there. I just kind of looked at my notes and stuff on that. So this is what I've heard Goodell is potentially proposing: shrinking the preseason down an additional game. Okay,
Yep.
So take off a little bit more wear and tear on the players that are there. But what that also does is it completely kills these UDFAs and kind of like roster cuss players,
Right.
because these preseason games are what often allows them to make the roster, right?
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
that'll have major impacts on quality of players, in my opinion, in the NFL. Because I mean, the likes of a guy like C.J. Anderson, Philip Lindsay, even Jonathan Cooper as a 7th-round draft pick, it was the preseason games and the back end of those preseason. Austin Eckler, all of these guys made their teams. And Jack, I'm sure there's a ton of Raiders that that have made.
Amari Gainer's a good one.
Yeah, that kind of made your team as a result of how, in fact, they showed out in the preseason games a lot of part there.
If they were to do that means you would have to do what DZ, what you brought up. Instead of doing these preseason games, you would have to do a lot more scrimmages.
Right. But just to kind of put this in perspective, this year's Super Bowl date is scheduled for February 8th, 2026 for this season's Super Bowl.
Hey, Alfredo, salute, brother.
And President's Day is on the 17th. So what they would effectively do is they'd shrink the preseason by 1
and push
add in an extra day, and you'd end up with like a net balance there, sort of thing. Yeah. So
yeah.
I think it'll be really interesting. I think it's a super interesting concept. Obviously, players are like, I don't want it. Why would you? Like, you're literally putting.
Yeah, why would you? If you're like a long-term starter, you're going in your 30s and you got to play an extra game where that preseason game, you're sitting out.
Yeah.
And letting the young cats, run it.
Right, but then you end up with this whole thing where sometimes it takes like a game for some of these young guys to kind of get used to the pace of the game and the way that it's going. And then you also end up with preseason for some players, for example, that are returning from injury. Well, head coaches will use those preseason games as test scrimmages to kind of ease that player back into full play speed and all that sort of thing as well. Like, there really does need to be a long look. And I mean a really long look at overall stuff, right? You just have to. You need to figure it out. So anyways, my general feedback is I'm going to probably eke my Broncos just because, of course, I'm not biased at all. And then it'll be Chargers, then it'll be the Chiefs, and then it'll be it'll probably be Broncos, Chargers, Raiders, Chiefs, because I think the loss of that player there, until proven otherwise, you have to wait and see how that gels together.
Yeah.
All the credit in the world to their defensive coordinator there. He is one of one, really. Like, he really is one of one.
Yeah,
in terms of what
Spags
he's
is
been
good.
able to do. But you need to see the players and how they fit and how they work out. But ladies and gentlemen, that basically completes the defense, and we are coming up. We are coming up to kind of the very end here. And next week's show, we're going to be able to have all of minicamp to review. Lots of information, lots of players, lots of guys. We're going to be able to extract plays and certain players and tie it all into kind of the stuff that we've spoken about for the last 3 or 4 weeks on the show. And I think that really does tie in everything nicely with a combination of the draft and OTAs and the rankings that we've just kind of had now. So it really does kind of get to show out all the different stuff. However, if any of you have any questions, please leave them down below in the chat right now so we can go ahead and pull those up real quick and answer them before we end the show. But we'll give that just a minute or so for those that are here.
So, Raider Shield family,
Yep.
I agree with them 100%.
Me too.
That needs to. They have, when the NFL left Hawaii, like, first of all, it was great for the Hawaiians, right? And it was like, it's a great place to go.
And the players wanted to go.
Yeah, and Hawaii is built around football. I mean, dude, a lot of great football players come out of the islands over there. And they just like cut out Hawaii. That used to be the Pro Bowl stomping grounds, and now it's in Orlando, and it's like, it's so gimmicky, to be honest with you. I think the Pro Bowl is a freaking joke now. Doesn't mean anything.
It's a joke.
They're throwing dodgeballs and doing these dumbass whatever the hell they do. I don't even watch anymore.
Drills, it's like,
yeah, the Pro Bowl was. I mean, I feel sorry for the young kids because they didn't get to see the Pro Bowls we did growing up. They were freaking amazing, and they all played, I believe, as Rainbow Field or Rainbow Stadium, whatever it's called in Hawaii. But yeah, it's a complete joke. It definitely needs to go back to Hawaii, and I don't understand why the NFL is just completely just shut out Hawaii now.
Well, none of the players now want to do it, so they don't want to get hurt because the money is so big. And now it's just like, doing these weird kind of drills. It's like American Gladiator, or what's that other one? Like, oh my God, that Japanese show where they just do like weird events. It's like, skill and athletic ability. It's like, no one's going to get hurt.
I think this is Piano Man, but no, I think they're both around like 900. I think I could see them both 900. This might be like, the first year Najee doesn't clip 1,000. I think they both get like around 900, but touchdowns go up. I think they have a good touchdown thing, but I don't see any 1,000. Go ahead, Jack.
Oh, so here's something else that's going to go. I don't know if you guys heard this. For again, being a worldwide sport, you mentioned Australia. So right now, again, for the Olympics, they're going to put in flag football.
Yeah.
So and since that's even going to Roger Goodell growing the brand of the Shield. Yeah. So it's like, I'm glad that's happening, but it's going to be weird. What do you do for flag football? Are you going to put American all pros for the men in flag football?
I've seen that there are better flag football players than like what is in our league. So like the guys who play this like at a, I don't know if you can call it professional level, semi-pro.
There are. Yeah, those guys are amazing.
So yeah, they're like better than what our NFL guys could be. Like
I got to see it to believe it. It's going to be like the basketball team when we stopped doing college basketball players and we started putting like Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and the Dream Team from the 90s.
I mean, sure, but this is like flag is completely different in my opinion. I think like a guy like Kyler Murray would kill it in flag football, like or a Lamar Jackson or even maybe Mahomes before he got put on the dad bod. But other than that, I don't think I'd want to see. I mean, maybe I'd see one or two of my players on there, but you also got to think about these guys get soft tissue injuries like there's nobody's business. So that would suck.
Yeah, they may not want to go. just
Flag
because of the
football
money.
is designed for a guy like Tyreek Hill. Flag football is designed for your quick twitch dudes. Like some of the cornerbacks in the NFL would be excellent at flag football. Another guy that actually be pretty good is DK Metcalf, because he's kind of he's got that, discipline and speed and stuff like that. But
this guy said Jalen Hurts already signed up for flag football. Like last time I checked, they don't tush push there. He doesn't need to squat 700 pounds doing flag football, so I don't see why he's the one out there.
I mean, he may want to do it. He may want to represent the country. And some of these guys, I've also heard some rumors, to be quite honest, that Pat Surtain II is actually on that list as well.
Right.
But the question is going to be, is it worth it?
Weber?
And the other thing we don't know is, what is the NFL going to do for these guys that are trying to sign up? They've made no policies around it yet.
Right.
And so the question is going to be, what will become of it, and do their contracts even allow it?
It's just like the guys that play in soccer around the world, right? So like their clubs sometimes don't want them playing the exhibition matches with their countries. They're like, hey man, we'd rather you not, we're paying you all this money. We don't want you going out there and getting hurt. Because I know that,
right?
I think it was, was it the Olympics? I believe it was Olympics, or it wasn't the World Cup, because I know that's like a no-brainer. I think the Olympics soccer, like some of the clubs are like, hang on, pump the brakes a little bit.
Some of them said no.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that type of money, we're talking big bucks. So losing your player, like again, we talked about the, all-stars. Like the players are not going to the all-stars. So maybe they want, like you said, Richie, maybe they want to represent, each country, but you get hurt, you can lose some big bucks.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what the owners do and say at the next owners meeting, or at the owners meeting, where this is all kind of put to the table, and to see kind of where this all comes out, because this is coming out. This is going to happen, and the question is, what will the NFL do about it? But either way, I tend to agree with you with regards to Hero's questions there, with regards to the Chargers running back room. I think you guys are going to have a much better running back room this year. I think it's going to be certainly a strength of your team. I think you've made some changes in your offensive line to further bolster your running back room with Becton and other things like that. He was obviously a great run blocker, whatnot.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it takes a lot for your team to end up with two of your running backs. Remember, running backs getting 1,000 yards each. Now,
I can see this guy's getting over 1,000.
I think he can, and I think that you're going to have one of your dudes crack 1,000, but I think it's going to be Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris is going to be the guy that cracks 1,000 yards, because he's behind a great offensive line, and he's also in a bit of a prove-it year. He's trying to make sure that he can show that I deserved more and I should have gotten more, and how dare Pittsburgh do me dirty like that. And so I think Hampton is going to be. Good point. I think Hampton, to be quite, I'm being honest, just in terms of how I'm observing things.
Yeah.
I think Hampton's going to be pulled back a little bit, and I think your coach is going to want Najee Harris to show Hampton how it's done at the NFL level, because Hampton and Najee Harris are very similar sized, statured guys.
Agreed.
And I think your coach is wanting Hampton to learn from Najee Harris, and so I think it's just a simple matter of, you brought Najee in for a reason. You're going to use him, but you brought the young dude in because he's the future.
They do play that. I've already seen it at camp. They do play that seniority thing quite a bit. But go ahead, Jack.
Well, what I was going to say on that was just like, you've got a 1-year deal. So why not put the tread, on Najee and keep your young buck, fresh? Because, next year, I'm sure he's going to be a good enough running back where you're going, I'm not going to pay Najee $8-9 million next year.
Right. Sure.
So then let's give it to Hampton. So do the wear and tear on Najee.
Right.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. And I think he cracks 1,000. I think he probably cracks somewhere in the 1,200 to 1,300 all-purpose yards, somewhere in that range there, because I really do think that Najee is going to basically come out the gates and say, look what I can do.
Did you guys see?
And so that's my prediction.
Richie, did you guys see King Henry, Derrick Henry, that he's trying to crack 2,000 yards? I think it's 2,000. I don't know if it was 2,500. And Adam Sandler is going to put him in a movie if he does. So that's going to be something to watch in Baltimore.
Well, I
Good luck
mean,
on
if there is a dude that I think can do it,
Yeah, probably.
like I kind of think that he's the guy that might be able to. He is a defensive end that is masquerading as a running back.
Yeah.
Which is
Dude.
like the dude's massive. So
Yeah, he's a massive human being.
Anyways,
I hope
guys,
he
that's-
sticks around in the league for a while, to be honest with you. I like him.
yeah. So, anyways, guys,
Hey, Nav,
that's-
I'll give you a shout out afterwards, bro.
Yeah, so that's where we're going to end it today for today's show. I think we had a great show, covered a lot of ground, did a lot of stuff. Come back with us next week. I want all of you in the chat that have stuck with us this long. First off, thank you. If you're in any of the channels, click that like button. Helps the channel out a lot and helps us grow. Down below in the comments, there's the other channel, MHRT Network or Captain Jack, depending on which one you're on. Jump onto the other channel and click that like button as well. Share this video with whomever you know that is a fan of any of the AFC West teams. And let's get more people in the chat on a weekly basis, just like you, who are fans of football. And ladies and gentlemen, until next week, where the West Side is the best side. Peace!
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.